why don't we start? Maybe Austin, if you just want to introduce yourself, and then we'll get Vidhi to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Levi, and thanks for having Vidhi and I for this conversation. But yeah, my name is Austin Smith, and I'm an organizational psychologist, and I lead the talent and organizational effectiveness group at VML. And our mission is to build strong, authentic personal brands that elevate the VML's work, business, and culture. I'll turn it over to Vidhi.
Thanks, Austin. Hi, everyone. My name is Vidhi Thakker, and I work with Austin on the Global Talent and Organizational Effectiveness team as director. I was surprised Austin didn't mention this, but we're generally called the toe group. So if he's the big toe, I'm the middle toe on the team. And, we've together built a strong foundation for VML from our people and talent development sort of capacity. And very excited to be here with Levi and Austin to share what we've learned from our interactions with Nadia.
Great. Thanks so much for being here. And maybe, Austin, I'm sure a lot of people know VML, but maybe not everyone. Do you just want to give a quick 1 minute on what VML is and how you kind of discovered or what drew you to Valence?
Yeah, sure. So VML is a creative agency. It's a consultancy and a tech company. So people think of us as an agency, but we're also a consultancy and tech company. And so we have lots of expertise in different areas. So we have expertise in communications, commerce, consultancy, CRM, CX, data, production, technology, and more. So we do a lot of stuff. And we have about 26,000 employees globally and 150 plus offices and 55 plus markets. And we have an annual revenue of about $3.5 billion. So we do a lot of stuff. And one of the things that we do internally in the TOE group is coaching. And we have an internal coach whose name is Christine Nolan. She's fantastic. And she's really built a demand for coaching. People see that coaching works. And there's only one Christine, and she can coach 15 to 30 people a year, and she does an incredible job. But when Vidhi and I were talking about how do we scale coaching, we really didn't have a possibility to do that until the advent of AI coaching. And so when we heard about Valence, we kind of jumped on the chance to do a pilot and kind of get things rolling, because what this allows us to do, obviously, is it allows us to scale coaching. And so all 26,000 employees have access to a coach. And of course, coaching, I believe, works because it's personalized, it's on your own time. And that's kind of the way that we interact with the world now. Things are personalized and we're all busy. And so we need something that's personalized and on demand. And that's what coaching has allowed us to do. So I would say, kind of to summarize, like, we know that coaching works, and Nadia has given us an opportunity to provide it to all of our employees rather than just the top tier of executives.
Yeah, that's great. And I think especially you're in a very competitive talent landscape, I know. And so being able to have the best offerings from your group to help retain people is critically important.
Right. And I think, and I think coaching, another thing about coaching, I think coaching is especially important in our industry. Like if you've ever, like our industry, people typically learned traditionally through apprenticeship model. And so there wasn't really lots of training. And so people are used to learning from other people. So if you've ever watched Mad Men, there wasn't, I don't think Don Draper provided many training programs, So we do have a lot of training programs, but people are used to have this apprenticeship kind of way of learning. And so I think coaching really fits in well with our culture.
And then Austin, why don't you share a bit more about the Thrive program that you guys have built? I think it's like an innovative, neat program. So why don't you share a bit about that?
Yeah. So thanks, Levi. Yeah. So what we've, I listed all those capabilities that we have. And one of the things that Vidhi and I have tried to do is apply our internal capabilities to the employee experience. And so to make these career conversations really less threatening and less anxiety provoking and less about you did this right, you did this wrong, and you need to do this better, we wanted to use our internal capabilities and apply that to the employee experience. And in this case, we used the idea of branding. And so we worked with our strategist, and we asked them, okay, when you're working with a brand, how do you help them come up with their brand message? How do you make sure they're providing value and to consumers and communicating that value? And we worked with them to come up with a framework. We call it the 4 Ps framework. And so essentially, there's 4 aspects of a brand. There's your purpose, your proposition, your perception, and your priorities. And so what we ask people in this Thrive process is to answer 4 questions, really. What's your purpose? What are you trying to accomplish? Second, what are you good at? What sets you apart? That's your proposition. And then third, how are you perceived? Because we know that there's always a little bit of a disconnect between how we see ourselves and how others see us. And so we want people to develop these authentic brands, and we want people to be able to showcase their authentic self and not something that's not aligned with who they really are. And finally, then we ask people to share their priorities. And so based upon your purpose and what you're good at and how you're perceived, what are you going to do from a work perspective, from a development perspective, and then also a wellness perspective to be able to strengthen your brand. And Vinny and I talk about branding as it's less about image. There's an image component, that's perception, but it's mainly about the value that you're providing. And so we want to help all 26,000 employees figure out what their purpose is, and then what value that they can provide uniquely to the organization. And if that's the case, then that's going to help them drive their own career. And it's also going to provide incredible value to our clients if we have 26,000 employees providing unique values, a unique value to our clients and our colleagues. So anyway, this is our idea of this is how we handle career conversations, and it's people connect to it partially because it's applying our own internal expertise to the employee journey, and is culturally relevant. But with everything, there are some challenges, and Nadia has really helped us implement this and make it come to life. And I know Vidhi's going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you've got this ambitious program. You got 26,000 people going through it. If it can go well, it makes a huge impact for those people and the value you give to your clients. Vidhi, how did you think about where an AI coach could help make sure this is successful?
Yeah, absolutely, Levi. So I think what Austin mentioned around our personal branding framework and Thrive, it resonates very quickly with our audiences, right? Because branding is our bread and butter. We talk about it all day long, dream about it all night long, and we definitely work with iconic brands, right? So we understand that language. When it comes to applying that to ourselves and to our personal brands, VMLers were very intrigued by this concept, because the way we phrased it is, Kit Kat has a tagline: have a break, have a Kit Kat. We have, every single global organization or global company brand has these kinds of taglines. Nike says, just do it. So when we say to VMLers, what's your brand statement? What's your tagline? How are you conveying your unique value proposition in very succinct terms, but not just in terms of words, but displaying these as well? It made sense like that. But the piece was, how do I take it from a concept to actually applying it to my career? How does it really unlock opportunities for me? How does it open doors? How does it give language to my managers, my advocates, to really talk about me in rooms that I'm not present in? And that's what was sort of the gap in our Thrive offering, which is a real true partner for our VMLers to start thinking about these concepts, right? Because self-reflection on these can only take you so far. But when a coach comes into the picture and asks you questions to help you start to clarify and crystallize this, and also to take it to the next level, all of this feedback that you're getting from your colleagues around your personal brand, how do you connect the dots? How do you make sense of that feedback? And how do you move it from feedback to actually action planning, developmental planning, setting goals? And then the third level, holding you accountable for those goals, right? So Nadia seamlessly integrated into our Thrive program as we started to think about the right use case to use this. And we realized, well, employees understand this, they understand the concept, they understand the philosophy. How do they now start to apply it to their careers to make it very tangible? Nadia helps them self-reflect. Nadia helps them make sense of feedback. And Nadia helps hold them accountable to goals and create development plans. And that's why it integrated beautifully into the Thrive program and process. And, the Thrive tool is also offered as an MS Teams app. Nadia integrated there, so employees can chat with her anytime. And she reminds them as well, hey, you've set yourself a goal. Let's talk a little bit more about this, and so on and so forth. So we when we came across Valence, we wanted to definitely try it because we knew that coaching was a gap in our ecosystem, and we wanted to make coaching scalable. But then we also wanted to make sure we introduced coaching in the context of something that already existed, so employees knew how to use a coach. and Thrive was the perfect sort of foundation for that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I can totally visualize it. You have these 26,000 people embarking on this journey, and then if you can give them, a thought partner and a helper along the way, so they're not on their own trying to figure this out. And then I know this is one of the things we're really focused on in the product, is elements of proactivity, not just kind of waiting for the user to come, but also saying, hey, if this is your personal brand, here's advice on when you can use it. How's it going? Are you hitting trouble spots that we need to double click on? So I think that's great. And then I know, Austin, part of this is also practice. And I know
Right.
you've thought a lot about practice and the role of maybe technology in practice, and how, that might apply to AI coaching in this, and even, a favorite pastime of yours of football.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And just, directly related to kind of what Vidhi was just saying, is it allows you to practice, and it allows you to practice confidentially. So maybe you're not really sure about your purpose in your career. You're not really sure what you want to do, but you don't really want to talk to your manager about that. Or you're not really sure about what you're really good at, but you're not really ready to talk to your manager about it. So what Nadia allows you to do is practice these conversations with your manager, or kind of think through them a little more before you talk to your manager. So I think that's a big benefit of the practice. It's confidential, and you're not practicing with your manager. You can practice before you talk to your manager, which is nice. But I think that an example of how technology is kind of escalating and elevating kind of performance and driving performance to happen more quickly is there's a National Football League example from last year where there was the rookie of the year for the NFL was this guy named Jaden Daniels. And typically, people who win the rookie of the year are not quarterbacks, because the quarterback is so complex. It's a very complex. Among all the positions, it's the most complex, and the game is so much faster. There's so much more happening that it becomes overwhelming, typically for rookie quarterbacks. In fact, if I think of the last 50 rookies of the year, only 10 have been quarterbacks, but of the 50 MVPs, like 45 have been quarterbacks. So it's a very important position, but in the past, it's taken a lot longer to learn it because it's so complex. And so this guy, Jaden Daniels, won the rookie of the year. He had this incredible season. They almost went to the Super Bowl. The Commanders, Washington Commanders, if any of you guys follow football, actually the NFL draft is today. So the NFL draft is NFL's in the news. But so they, people like investigate, like, how are you playing this well? And part of it he attributed to his use of virtual reality kind of goggles. And so he was able to practice a real game simulation at fast speed. And so when he actually got in the game, it felt slow. And so he attributes part of his success to this use of the VR goggles. And I think this is very similar to AI coaching and Nadia, because in the sense that, first of all, it's confidential. So he was able to make mistakes without his coaches being there and watching over him. So that kind of freed him up to take risks in his practice. He could practice anytime he wanted. He didn't have to have other people around to throw the ball to or practice the plays with. It was on demand. And then also he could set up scenarios that he had not encountered yet. And so that's the same way with Nadia, is you can set up any scenario and practice that. You can, so for a first-time manager, but even before you become a manager, you can practice scenarios that you think you're going to encounter as a first-time manager. Or, the list goes on about the possibilities of different scenarios. But I think that one of my surprises that I didn't really think about was the impact of practice and the ability that AI coaching allows one to practice a lot more than a live coach. Sometimes it's hard to get the time for the live coach, or sometimes you just want to practice it for 5 or 10 minutes and not an hour. So it worked for Jaden Daniels, and I think it's going to help transform the way that we learn in organizations because of the ability to practice.
Yeah, I think the parallel with especially a new manager is like spot on, right? The world is different in a way. There's more things happening, there's more complexity in your role. And if you can find a place to get practice, to get some reps in, to get some feedback, and especially to do it in kind of a confidential, safe way versus going to your peers or your direct manager and kind of admitting weakness or showing that you don't quite know what you're doing yet, which a lot of people are hesitant to do. Yeah, it creates this great environment for that. Why don't maybe now is actually a good time, Mallory, if you want to help us pull up the slides. I'm just looking at Lori's question of like, what do employees focus on with AI coaching? And if you maybe go one slide, we'll talk a bit about languages, and then we can go a bit to what people focus on. So maybe first, just with VML specifically and this Thrive program, we had 89 offices engage with the program. We've had basically like a 70% ongoing reuse rate. So of the VMLers who have started, using Nadia in this Thrive program, 70% of them are regularly coming back, and they're doing it in 36 different languages. And maybe in a minute, Vidhi can talk about the languages and some of the feedback we've got. But on the next slide, we can get a bit to Lori's question. So these are the topics at kind of a high level that folks are talking about. And you can see in part by the use case that it was introduced for with this Thrive program, skill building and career growth are making up a strong portion of the usage. 38% of the conversations are about those themes, which again fits the introductory use case that people came in with, working through those 4 Ps of the Thrive program. But then you do see there's other things that are popping up, communication, interpersonal and team dynamics. And we see this at almost all of our clients. There's an initial, wedge use case that users come in with. But then after that, they realize that in the flow of their day or week, they have all kinds of challenges that the coach can help with, right? Maybe it's a, team dynamics thing. 2 people on my team are not getting along. I don't know how to deal with this. Can you give me some advice? Communication. I have a meeting coming up. I'm not sure how to make that meeting effective. Can you help me work it through? Strategy or business work. I've got 6 priorities this week or this month. I need to figure out where to focus my time. I need to get to the heart of issues. Can I have a thought partner help me do that? So again, these were the themes that they started with, but then you saw these other kind of in the flow of work and ongoing engagement pickup. And some of the skill building is people coming back, week over week to check in on and continue developing on the skills that they've set up to learn. Then I'll just show one more slide that this is kind of the extra evidence that Vidhi and Austin get. I'm not going to actually go through the numbers, but you can then see a bunch of breakdowns across each business unit, each geography, and see interesting things like, executive management is way higher on interpersonal and team dynamics than other places. Maybe that fits an intuition of what executive managers are working on. Maybe the IT group is really focused on skill building. Maybe there's something to learn there. But so, you can get real deep data cuts that can give you a sense of what people are focused on, what they're struggling with. And then maybe there's interventions that you want to do either, from the toe centrally or from the decentralized groups supporting these. But I just wanted to spend a minute on the slides, and we can probably pull them down now to just give you a sense of what those themes were. And that first slide talked about language. And Vidhi, I don't know, do you want to share? I know you've had personal experiences, and from a bit of your focus groups, this was a theme that came up. Do you want to share a bit more of your observations there?
Absolutely. Thanks, Levi. I think for me, the first time we interacted with Nadia and we started considering, like, is this something we can roll out for a global organization such as ours with over 26 are all of the approaches that Nadia are going to have work for people outside of a certain geography. And what we've discovered through our focus groups, even our pilot sessions, is the amount of languages that Nadia is, of course, available in also translates to a lot of different things around cultural intelligence. So it's not just that she can speak your language, she also understands the nuances of different cultures and the context you're coming from. For me, for example, my accent changes every 5 minutes depending on who I'm talking to. I'm based in London. I work with folks in America. I have family in India. And so my husband can sometimes not figure out what mood I'm in or what persona I am, I have taken on. But Nadia gets it, right? Nadia understands when I suddenly need to switch language. I mean, think about it. If you are talking to a close friend or a spouse or a partner, and you're in the middle of a conversation and you're suddenly quite emotional, you're likely to switch to a language that you maybe grew up speaking, or it comes more naturally to you the way you think. And Nadia understands that. So I've had conversations with Nadia where I switch between English and Gujarati or English and Hindi, and she picks it up. She understands the nuances in those language differences as well. And a fantastic, a fantastic example that came up in our focus group was really the story of this manager who was using Nadia to help prepare for a feedback conversation she wanted to have with a team member. One of the things that she wanted to inform the team member or kind of give feedback to her was that you're fantastic and very, very proactive. However, it would be really helpful if you could manage up rather than continue to wait for tasks to be shared with you and so on and so forth. So she worked with Nadia to share certain examples, frame the right language, and identify how to deliver this feedback. When she was getting ready to wrap up the conversation, Nadia said to her, "Hey, hold on. Before you go and have this conversation, can we talk a little bit more about your management style and how might that be impacting the dynamic and the expectations you have from your team member?" Now, this manager reported feeling quite taken aback because we're so used to putting into, let's say, ChatGPT, "Hey, help me do this," and then ChatGPT gives you a response. But Nadia here is very curious, relentlessly curious almost. So she wants to ask you more questions. She isn't just going to give you an answer and say, "Go try that." She really wants the answer to be valuable, meaningful to your individual context. So with this individual, Nadia came back and said, "Before you go and give this person feedback, let's talk a little bit more about your backgrounds, your styles." And through an additional 40-minute conversation with this manager, the manager walked away with this aha moment because they discovered that because they're from two different cultures, two different countries and nationalities, the manager's expectations around managing up really in this other individual's culture are looked at as insubordination. And they're not used to having those kinds of moments with their managers where they can say, "Hey, I actually disagree," or "Here's a different idea," or "Can we try something different?" And so the manager realizes that she needs to spend time creating a psychologically safe environment for this team member to realize, I can actually share my own opinions, and I can have, I can raise my hand and say, "This is something I want to do," and it's not going to be looked at as insubordination. And so when this individual shared her feedback, the group agreed, the focus group agreed, "Yes, I've experienced things like this with Nadia as well. Yes, she can help me identify how to talk to different clients depending on cultural nuances and so on." And that, I think, was truly powerful and astonishing and astounding about an AI coach, because that was the first thought Austin and I had. Is this truly internationally scalable? And our initial focus groups itself already started telling us how Nadia is quite powerful and intuitive.
Yeah. Are there other, I know you guys ran a bunch of focus groups, and sorry, I'll just say, I see a couple questions about demos in the chat. So we won't have time today for a demo, but I think there should be like a pink Connect with Valence button that you can see. And if you click that, I think it should like walk you through to a place where you can kind of book a demo and get one. So apologies that we won't be able to demo, but you can throw more questions of what Nadia does, and Vidhi and Austin can chat more about that. But yeah, I know you guys ran a bunch of focus groups, and the languages was one key kind of insight or surprise that came up. Were there other ones that came up as you were talking to users who've been working with Nadia through the Thrive program?
I think, well, two things that typically happen with AI coaches is people say, well, it's not going to be empathetic and it's going to be biased. And so we purposely did pilots with our employee resource groups, and we asked them to break it, try to make it give some biased responses. And the takeaway was that that it was actually, some people felt that it was less biased than a real coach, and they felt more comfortable talking to the AI coach. than an actual coach. Some people felt like that. So, and then secondly, with empathy, people felt like that it was empathetic. In fact, I just saw a study that came out, I think last month, with doctors, and they looked at an AI coach versus an actual doctor. And 9 out of 10 times people, when they thought they were talking to a real doctor, felt that the AI was actually more empathetic. And so anyway, I think that with the AI coaches, certainly we're not intending to replace human coaches. That's not the intent here. Where there's a need for human coaches, and we have coaches, live coaches, but this is it gives us an ability to scale across the enterprise. And with that, we found that people don't feel it in general, they don't feel it's biased, and they do actually feel it's empathetic. So that was more of a surprise for me as well.
Yeah, if I could just add to what Austin's sharing, and I think KJ in the chat has also asked, right? Like, I'm keen to understand the employees' comfort with privacy and confidentiality piece. So to Austin's point, right? We initially did feel, are employees going to warm up to Nadia? Are they going to feel safe and secure? And do they feel that Nadia understands them? That's why we ran some of the pilots. And over time, what employees are saying is she's a lot more comfortable to chat with, because you can literally just turn on a voice feature, talk about your entire day for 10 minutes, and she's going to summarize all that and say, hey, these are the things you're learning, and this is what I've understood about you. Initially, there was hesitance to open up like that, and they found it, again, surprising that Nadia did ask them questions to open up, right? For folks who are not used to coaching or have never had a coach, that's quite surprising, because you typically go to a training or learning event and you get the information, and you're meant to use that information to apply it the way you feel fit. But Nadia really tries to customize it to your own requirement. And therefore, the initial concerns that people had about, will Nadia understand me? Can I really open up to her? She creates that environment by trying to get to know you and personalize her advice. And so people do eventually find that they're more curious, more interested, and also more likely to take on some of the advice and guidance she's offering them, because they know it's not biased, again, because when you receive feedback from a colleague or a senior leader or manager even, they are operating from their own frame of reference and may suggest things based on their own experiences. But employees in our focus groups, the feedback circles we conducted, also said, I get it. I agree with Nadia, because it felt very personalized to me, and not that it was coming from some sort of biases or baggages and so on.
And
yeah,
this might fit. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Levi.
I was going to say, this might fit. I see a question from KJ, Ki Jiang, sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. It's really about like the employee's reaction to an AI coach, thinking maybe IT security. I know you guys have thought like human coach versus AI coach. Just, yeah, what's been like the openness or acceptance level to this, AI digital coach from employees?
I mean, I think people have generally been, well, I think it varies, there's certainly some early adopters that are all on board, and there are some people who are more skeptical. I mean, I kind of think it's like a little bit like the advent of online banking, like we used to, like, I'll speak for myself, I didn't want to deposit a check over my phone. I still wanted to go to the bank, at least put it in the ATM or go see a teller. I wasn't really sure that I could trust the banks would keep my financial information secure. I also thought that maybe I needed to go to the bank for different things that now I do online, just because I needed to see a person. And so it might have taken me longer really to embrace online kind of banking than some of my friends. But I think it's like that in Nadia. Some are not adopting as quickly, but I think that but I do think that there's an initial group of 1,600, 2,000 who are all in, and then when people use it, like when I started depositing checks using online banking, I was like, this is incredible. I love it. And I trusted it, and then I'm all in. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with Nadia. Just like at a bank too, there's still reasons that you need to go to a bank and see people, and that's why we have live coaches as well, because there's certain things that we're going to rely on our kind of internal coaches or external people who come in. But Nadia can solve, just like online banking, Nadia can probably do 80% of what you need to do in coaching, just like online banking, most of it can be done online, but people there's different levels of acceptance of that change. But then once people accept it, they're all in. And I think I anticipate that to happen at VML with Nadia. I think it's still catching on, but we have the people who have embraced it enthusiastically. And I think one of the reasons, and Vidhi was kind of mentioning this, people haven't embraced it when they start using it, is one of the things that I was surprised about is the number of questions it asks. And so I thought I would say, here's my issue, kind of help me out. And they would say, okay, you should do this, this, and this. But I mean, the people on this call are all interested in coaching. And so you would know that, the best coach is the one that's going to ask questions. It's not really just listening to one or two things and giving you advice. And I think it's kind of like the Dr. Phil. For those of you who are familiar with Dr. Phil, he was a talk show host in the United States who had a show where he was, and he's a psychologist. And so he would get someone on stage with a very complex human, condition or problem that they were trying to solve. And Dr. Phil would listen to them for 2 minutes, and then for 30 minutes, and he would listen to them, and he had a catchphrase, well, how's that working for you? Which is kind of condescending. Of course, it wasn't working, or they wouldn't be on the show. But and then he would just talk for 30 minutes about what the person should do. And I kind of thought Nadia would be like that. I thought it would just be full of advice, but it was like a real quality coach in the sense it asked lots and lots and lots of questions. And it never really told me you should do this. It said, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I would say, well, I have thought about this. I haven't thought about that. What about that? And then it would tell me more about that, but it would ask me more questions. So I think that like a chat GPT, a system that's not really programmed specifically for coaching in mind, is more like Dr. Phil. And the, Valence is more like, you think of the best coach you've worked with. It has that same style of asking questions. So that was one of my surprises too, is how many questions it asked me, and that was validating for me, and that's kind of what got me kind of hooked and really bought in.
And Vidhi, how are you thinking about maybe two questions? One, how are you thinking about kind of human coaching and AI coaching and how they fit together? Why don't we just start there?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I think that's probably one of the most interesting questions when it comes to any kind of application of AI. Where do we draw the line? Where does it stop? And, so one thing right off the bat, first thing, is Nadia is really good at detecting when she is not going to be useful. And I think that to me is incredibly powerful, because there are these guardrails that Valence has set up where Nadia says, actually, I think at this point, you probably need to talk to someone, a human being, a wellness advisor, a coach, etc. So first off, that guardrail, and each organization can set some of these up to customize for context, but Valence has set these up as well, which is very much appreciated. When Austin said we asked our pilot group to try and break Nadia, that's one of the things that they discovered, and they really appreciated as well. I think the second thing, which I think is more about how we as organizational psychologists or HR practitioners think about coaching. For a significant period of time, because coaching has always been expensive, and it's a significant investment of human energy and capacity, it has been kept as sort of this reward almost for making it to a certain level in your career. The highest echelons or the top leadership gets access to a coach to help them get better, to fine tune their behaviors, to become a better leader of an organization or a team. What coaching through AI does is it makes it so truly scalable that it does not now need to be a reward to reach a certain level, but really the means to get there. Right. And what it's doing is it's making people more coachable sooner, rather than waiting to find out if that's going to work when you're at a C-suite or, a certain level in your career, which is the beauty of AI coaching. And when you do reach the level where you get access to a human coach, because they tend to be more expensive, of course, you are already ready to be coached. You are coachable. You understand what behavior changes could look like. You're open to trying new things. You stay coachable if you start early in your career. And that's what Nadia is sort of unlocking for all of us as talent practitioners. We're making our workforce more coachable early, and that truly helps. And then I think the last piece, which we mentioned previously as well, is the likelihood to receive feedback from a coach versus a human coach. Also, how open you are to it also really has an impact on how coachable you are. So it's really a balance between when is the right time to have an AI coach, when is the right time to have a human coach, and how do they kind of play with each other, interact with each other. And I know I said that was my last point, but I have one more. The only thing that I've learned in working with Valence and Parker and the team is the difference between small C coaching and big C coaching, as Parker has framed it early on. Because big C coaching is sometimes very transformational. It's those things you need when you're thinking about strategic differences, making changes to your career decisions, so on and so forth. But small C coaching is on the day-to-day, week-to-week, the month-to-month ways in which you can modify your behaviors, improve, and make those incremental changes. So Nadia, hands down, supports you with that small C coaching in many ways, and also at times goes for the big C coaching. But then there's the human element for the big C coaching as well.
Great. We have 5 minutes left. And I just saw a question in the chat that other people might have. You might have a 10-minute answer, but could you guys share maybe the 1 or 2 minute answer on just any pushback from legal or IT security as you brought this in? And again, I'm sure that could be a longer conversation, but maybe we do the 1 to 2 minute and then we can give kind of a final question.
Yeah, I'll let Vidhi answer that one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we did go through, and I know we have some of our colleagues from WPP here on the call. So we did go through, significant, stringent checks and balances from our legal and compliance teams. And of course, we're using it. And I don't think there's a more thorough legal team in the world than the WPP legal team. So you're all good. If you want to use Nadia, you can go ahead. No problem.
Yeah.
It was a significant review for sure. I think their concerns more were, is Nadia being trained on the information she's gathering about our employees? And is that something that informs how Nadia develops as a coach? And that's something that Valence has assured us. And we know how the system and frameworks work. So Nadia does not get trained on any of these conversations. They're all very confidential. The quality of responses has been checked significantly through our pilots and so on. So if we've rolled it out at WPP, I can probably say a significant part of the world can roll it out because we have a very thorough legal team, and they tried the tool, they went through all of the paperwork, and they're pretty confident that this is the right path forward for us as well.
And we're like SOC 2, Type 2 compliant. We have done dozens and dozens of these like legal and IT security reviews and have so far passed every single one. Some we pass quickly, and some it does take a little bit of effort to get through it. But yeah, we've passed everyone. But sorry, Austin, are you looking to jump in? I see your face.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, I'll just say with that, it doesn't really use our data, but we can. I was surprised at the ability for us to customize Nadia. So, for example, we put our 4Ps branding framework in there, and so when someone is asking questions about career development, it uses that framework, and so that's very customizable, configurable. The other thing that we did was we've used it for RTO, and so I think that return to office, we had use cases continue to emerge that we had not expected. And so, for example, with RTO, you think of like a chatbot, like that'll just answer questions about a policy. But what Nadia has allowed us to do is people can actually receive coaching from Nadia on their concerns about return to office. So if someone is a working parent and they say, I know the policy, thank you, Nadia, what's the policy? That's the policy. Okay, I understand. That's going to be a challenge for me. I need to go home and pick up my child at 3 o'clock. I'm concerned about talking to my manager about that. How do I do that? And you can role play that conversation with the manager. And so I think that's an example of how over our journey, I think Vidhi and I will be able to see new use cases that emerge from Nadia.
Yeah, that's great. I think we're seeing that with other both users and clients. You kind of again get started with like a wedge that's really critical for the organization and the person. And then you realize, like what I think of is what are the instances in your company where you wish an employee could talk to a smart coach, L&D, IO psych kind of person for 10 minutes. And all of a sudden you realize those are happening all day, every day. And so those end up getting picked up. But we're almost out of time. Maybe a final question is just for both of you, where do you hope to be a year from now as it relates to the Thrive program and AI coaching with Nadia?
You can take that, Vidhi, first. And then
Sure. Yeah, no, for sure. So I think the big piece we've uncovered is Nadia frees up our managers in many, many ways, right? Because we're not saying that the role of the manager gets diluted, but some of the burden from our managers is off now because Nadia provides that day-to-day, week-to-week support to employees to think through their career decisions, how they're approaching goals, so on and so forth. And in addition to that, it also provides our managers almost sort of a coach the coach kind of training. So I think the next piece we're starting to think about is how can AI coaching support our managers to be the best versions of themselves, to be the best managers, and really truly be good coaches as well, to build on that coaching culture, to really leverage a tool like this to help our managers. So I think that's sort of the direction in which we're going with AI, to how to continue to support our managers.
Yeah, and with that, I think it's going to completely transform the way that we do leadership and management coaching. And I think that people are just now understanding the power of it. And to your point, Levi, I think individuals are going to continue to see new and new ways that they can use an AI coach. And I think it's just going to be standard pretty soon for just about everyone to use an AI coach in their daily kind of work life. And I think the people who use it are going to have an advantage. So my encouragement to all of you is, just jump in and, try. There's no perfect solution. We have, there's no perfect solution, but I would say jump in and give it a shot, because I do think this is a transformational technology in the space of leadership and management training. And so you might as well go ahead and try it out.
Yeah, I think we're seeing very similar things with a lot of clients. Like more and more are bringing in AI solutions every couple months. But I think there's just such a clear challenge and use case of scaling coaching. And so it just is so simple to understand and the value is so immediate. And then I think like you all have experienced, you learn so much. And you make the right pivots and changes to make it even more impactful. But everyone, this has been lovely. Everyone here has busy lives. It's 10:45 a.m. where I'm at. We claimed we were going to stop now. Thank you so much to Vidhi and Austin for sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it. Thanks to folks for chiming in the chat. If you have other questions, again, there's this Connect with Valence. We can try to answer the questions, offline or book a follow-up conversation with you. But yeah, thanks so much, Vidhi and Austin, and everyone for listening in. I hope it was really valuable. I learned a bunch of neat things, even though I've been close to this.
Yeah.
So have a great day, everybody.